Hello friends! Today I want to tell you a story about business as mission. BAM is the acronym, and it's a widely used concept today around the world as people do business internationally as Christians, often very openly, in order to have a witness for the Lord in different parts of the world. It is especially used in restricted countries where you may have to be a little more careful about your openness. However, it's not a new concept. It's been used for years and years. And for me, it was 40 years ago when I was introduced to business as mission. I had just left Far East Broadcasting Company in Manila and transferred to Open Doors Asia. We were still living in Manila. The kids were still going to Faith Academy. And I was traveling mostly in China. A businessman from Riverside, California named Loda Rogers, wonderful Christian man, came to Open Doors and said, I have a product that I've made millions of dollars on, and before I go to be with the Lord, I want to use it for some form of mission aid or work or help. And he said, can you use my product in China? I have a burden for the people of China. Well, we discussed it, and sure enough, there was a way to do it. Loda Rogers' product was called NUSOIL, which was high-speed composting process, and it was something that would be very useful in agricultural China. And so we were introduced to Loda. He explained how his product worked and what it took. And it was a wonderful, wonderful relationship that we had for a number of years, starting in 1979 and going through 1981. Loda would bring a 5-pound bag of concentrate of NUSOIL. Now, it was a formula that was made up of microorganisms and enzymes, and it was a very, very secret formula that he had developed. In fact, he said, China will not likely try and buy this from me, and that's okay, because it'll keep us going there. They'll keep us on the string until they can develop it themselves. But he said, to be able to figure out my formula, you would need 2 laboratories, the best labs in America, and they would have to work together for 1 whole year in order to break down and analyze my formula. So I'm not worried about them figuring it out right away. And he said, it'll give us an opportunity to travel through agricultural China. So that was the plan. We located a businessman in Hong Kong, a Christian businessman, who said, well, my son is a friend of one of your Open Doors guys in Hong Kong, and the 2 of them can be your traveling companions as we go, and I'll introduce you to agricultural groups throughout the southern part of China. And that was the strategy, and the process was that Loda would hold a seminar with the agricultural people in the area where we went. After the seminar, we would go to a farm and do a demonstration of the product. And then after 6 weeks, we would come back to do a follow-up of when the humus, which is what the pile of biodegraded waste would become, would be then put on the land. Now, China had an incredible challenge in those days. I'm not an agricultural specialist, and I'm working with one in this project. And I had gone to high school in Waterford, which was a tobacco growing area in Ontario, and so agriculture was an important part of even our high school discussions. But I was shocked at how little these farmers knew about the real makeup of soil and all the different elements of agriculture. They did not even understand about pH factors, the alkaline acidic extremes of it. And they kept socking commercial fertilizers on their soil making it compacted so that it was like a rock after a while. And Loda says, you need something to, uncompact or decompact your soil, as well as to give your product better growing opportunities. And he says, my product, NUSOIL, will do that. And so we had to go back and especially supervise when they would then put it right on the crops, as opposed to just regular pig manure, which they often did, directly to the field, and then supervise it, because the challenge was the microorganisms would indeed dig down into the soil and loosen it, but they needed lots of water, a lot of water. Well, the way Chinese irrigated in their areas in those days were little canals that ran through the side of fields with a little stream of water in it, and they would use these long bamboo poles with what we would call a tomato soup can, a Campbell's tomato soup can on the end of it, and they dip that into the water and then spray it onto the soil. And they would do 1 can of that water per plant. Well, Loda would go ballistic. He'd say, hey, guys, this thing needs 10 times that. And so they would then do it twice. And he'd go, no, I said 10 times. Well, that took a lot of irrigation water. And so we would have to be there to really supervise the use of this if it was really going to function and work properly. That was the process. So we began. We had 2 young men from Hong Kong as our companions. So 4 of us traveled together. And we started with a seminar, and we would get our picture taken. This one was taken when I was later alone. We would get our picture taken. The other man in the suit and necktie was the Christian businessman from Hong Kong. We would also be welcomed by a special dinner, a 21-course banquet for us when we arrived each time. It was really quite amazing, and it was very, very hospitable, and that was Chinese culture. The funniest event that happened was the one time that I brought Diane with me. So we went to the city of Guilin, who were interested in how to deal with their excess garbage that was biodegradable garbage. And Loda actually later did sell NUSOIL to Shanghai garbage area. They were wanting to do the same thing, to biodegrade the organic waste that would be piled in high piles of rubble there. And so Guilin was interested. So we get welcomed by a large group, and we have this big round table, huge round table, and our 2 companions from Hong Kong told Diane and me, don't talk about the food. This is a place that has the most unusual food in all of China. In fact, they eat everything that moves. And so they're very proud of it, and they don't really like anybody making comments about their food or even asking about it. So just when small talk around the table, talk about anything and everything except the food. Well, we did. They told us what we could know each time. So one course was salamander stew, and there was some very other unusual anteater. There was an anteater plate. Well, we came to about the 18th course, and it looked like little spring rolls, or the Filipinos call them lumpia, little wrapped meat pieces with some kind of wrapping around them. And Diane loved them. She said, oh man, this is really good. And she's chucking this down, and she's just enjoying it so much. And she turned to Hubert, one of our companions. She said, Hubert, I know I'm not supposed to talk about food, but you've got to ask these men, what is this that I'm eating? Because it is so good. Tell them I love it, and it's just wonderful. So they began to talk. And of course, as you know, cultures are quite different about table manners. And in that country, they talk with their mouth full, and they're talking away, and they're eating, and they're talking. And it seemed like we were never going to get an answer to her question. But finally, Hubert turned and he says to Diane, we don't know what you call this animal that this meat comes from, but you have this animal in your country, meaning Canada and the United States. He said, it's a little black animal with a white stripe down its back. Well, Diane almost threw up, and she stopped eating these things, and she couldn't eat another one. It's amazing how your mind controls even your taste buds. And I tease her to this day about how much she loves eating that wonderful dish in Guilin. Well, after the dinner, of course, we would then start a series of seminars. In some cases, they asked Loda Rogers to do 3 days of agricultural seminars. So he would share with these farmers, very basic things up to some very more complicated things. And also his personal opinion about the negativity of commercial fertilizers, chemical fertilizers, on the soil. He was very much a holistic, natural, you would say, organic farmer, and also felt that his product helped that as well. Then we would go out, after the seminar, we would go out to do the demonstration. And I have to tell you about the first demonstration because it's really hilarious. So the product is a bag of, it looks like soil, but it's a concentrate of NUSOIL enzymes and microorganisms. And Loda would say, now when you get this product, the first thing you have to do is test that it's alive. Because if the temperatures rise over 150 degrees in this bag, it'll kill them. And if the microorganisms are dead, then this is nothing but just another bag of dirt. It's not really NUSOIL. So the first thing you have to do is test that this thing is alive. And the best test is the smell test. And he said, you gotta, so what we would do is he would take a small amount of this concentrate, and we would put it in a spray can. So you remember in the good old days and in the non-technical days, you would have these cans that you strap on your back with a handle and a nozzle where you sprayed the water. And so he would mix in this spray can his concentrate and show them how to do that, what the proportions were. And he'd say, now you go, and he says, now to test that it's alive, that this is working, we need something that smells really, really bad. So he says, do you have something that smells really bad? And they go, oh, yes. And so they brought some buckets, which they carried pig urine and pig feces to the fields in. And they set them down there. In fact, I think you can see some of the buckets in this picture. And Loda says, now, first of all, you've got to smell how bad it is, because then, you need to compare it after I spray it with NUSOIL. And they said, oh, no, we know what it smells like. We don't have to go anywhere near that bucket. We can smell it from here. They're like 20 feet away. And, okay, he says. So he walks over, he has the spray can on his back, and he's pumping it, and he's got the hose, and he sprays these buckets with NUSOIL concentrate. It's essentially a liquid, but with that in it. And he says, now, if this is alive, you will not smell anything after I spray it. Anything negative. And sure enough, it was like mind-boggling for me. NUSOIL these microorganisms would just kill that odor like you wouldn't believe. There was just no odor. And so he'd say, okay, guys, now come and smell the bucket. You got to see that this is working. And they would take one step. Now they're 19 feet away. Go. No smell. They would do this step by step until they get about 3 feet away from those buckets. And they would go. "Oh!" And they burst out into chatter, and they turned to Loda, and through the interpreter they said, "Could you spray our whole farm, please?" They were mind-boggled that the stuff really worked and that there was no odor.